Our first three problem scenarios were very much procedural in nature. Our fourth, fifth and sixth problem scenarios are rather more straightforward in that they simply involve looking at a rule of EU law, seeing if it applies to the circumstances and the facts that you've been provided with, and then looking to see if there are any potential defences, exceptions, justifications. This fourth problem scenario is very much one of these. It's concerned with fiscal barriers to the free movement of goods, so potentially either a customs duty or charge having equivalent effect, or discriminatory internal taxation. You approach both of these issues in the same way. First, you have to determine whether or not this is a charge having effect equivalent to a customs duty, in which case Article 30 applies, or else if Article 110 applies, if it is discriminatory internal taxation. So step one is to determine which of these applies. Now we've got a case or two that helps you distinguish between the two. If Article 30 applies, then it's pretty straightforward. It's very strict. There are very few defences, exceptions, justifications to Article 30. If, however, either of these measures are caught by Article 110, then you're looking at a two-stage test. The first is whether or not these goods are similar to one another. And if the goods are similar to one another, and we've got a case that tells you whether or not goods are regarded as being similar to one another, then you have to determine whether or not the taxation on the imported goods is in excess of that on the domestic goods. If it is in excess of those domestic goods, then the next step is to determine whether or not there are any objective justifications for this. And again, there's some authority around that. The second limb of Article 110 applies not where taxes are discriminatory in nature, but where they have some protective effect. And again, we've got a key case for that explains this. Most of these cases concern alcohol, so they are very, very relevant to our problem scenario. And again, you have to consider whether or not the difference in treatment is justified on the basis of some legitimate social purpose, on the basis of objective criteria. You apply this same approach to both the Belgian measure and the Swedish measure. So with the Belgian charge, first you determine whether or not it's Article 30 or Article 110. Consider whether or not this beer is similar to Belgian beer. And if it's similar, are they being taxed more heavily? Is this difference in treatment in some way justified? The Swedish charge, again, you have to consider whether or not this is Article 30 or Article 110. There is some similarity to some of the cases like Capolongo and Fratelli Cucci, etc. here. So you may want to explore that in particular with respect to the Swedish charge. The key thing is to make sure that in particular with the Swedish charge, you're exploring both avenues, whether it's Article 30 or Article 110, because it's not entirely clear. Follow these steps in a logical, methodical manner. Make sure that you are citing your key cases that we covered in the classes in particular, maybe doing a little bit more research if you find anything else that's of particular relevant, and applying it to the facts. Thinking always about whether or not these measures could be defended as having a legitimate social purpose on the basis of objective criteria. If you do all that, you should be just fine.